Dr. Naresh Sukhani speaking on Bullwhip effect. The objectives of this video is specifically understanding the story and meaning behind Bullwhip effect, the concept and consequences, and specifically the strategies which are used for mitigating the Bullwhip effect. Where does one find Bullwhip effect? Specifically, we might have observed it's majorly being seen in supply chain, and it comprises of two words. That's bull and whip. So what does this mean? Let's understand this. The word bullish, if you understand with respect to stock market, what happens is when we are saying that the share price of a particular stock is bullish in nature, it means that it's actually going upwards. So if you might have seen, where does this bull word come in? Yeah, it comes in from the way how the bull charges, specifically pierces the horn, a horn of into a particular asset and throws that asset up. So that's known as bullish effect. So when it throws up, it goes beyond boundary, okay, beyond measures. So that's known as bullish. And the other word is specifically which is known as whip, as you are able to see combined. So if you see the combined effect is known as bullwhip effect when you majorly see that the consumer, which starts variable demand, is holding a whip in its hand, and say suppose today the consumer is buying 10, tomorrow it buys 15. The retailer feels that uh, tomorrow the consumer is going to buy more, so he majorly arranges for something more extra, which is 20. But similarly, many retailers like this do the same. And if you see the ripple effect, which is a whip effect, specifically comes in and overthrows the entire supply chain out of the order. And that is what it is known as a bullwhip effect. At the last, when you majorly see in this, as per the intermediaries of the supply chain, which are retailers, wholesalers, manufacturers, you majorly observe that there is good amount of variability. The reason is why, because it's creating an increment effect, which is positive as well as negative. All right. The actual meaning of bullwhip effect. Now, first of all, let's understand uh, the bullwhip effect was coined in by J. Forrester in Industrial Dynamics in 1961. So that's the reason why it is also known as the Forrester effect, or as very rightly known as whiplash effect. It's a phenomenon that occurs in supply chain where small fluctuations in customer demand lead to magnified fluctuations in orders placed upstream in the supply chain. Now, what does upstream mean? Order specifically in terms of when we are understanding the orders which are being placed from the consumers and towards the retailers, then to the wholesalers, then towards the stockists, or to the distributors, or towards the manufacturers is an upstream flow. So whenever we are meaning in terms of the orders are placed, but the movement of the flow of material will happen the reverse way, specifically from the manufacturer to the distributor to the stockist to the wholesaler to the retailer, and then finally to the consumer. When we are understanding this, here is where I've quoted certain examples. We are able to see that the customer is actually holding a whip in his hand and giving some variable orders. Small changes in demand at the consumer level. Now, these consumers are located in several places, specifically in terms of, if you understand, at different locations. But consumers like this, if they start creating orders or over orders or under orders, specifically, it will lead to variation or fluctuation in the inventory management of retailers, which in turn, a collection of retailers will create a whip effect with respect to the manufacturers or in terms of distributors. And the same thing when it magnifies specifically at the suppliers level, the whip is so large that the fluctuations or the variations are unimaginable. They're not controllable. The reason is why, because from here it starts in huge numbers. And when it comes here, the magnitude is specifically for one, but it's uncontrollable. The magnitude is quite very large. The variation is quite very large. Hence, it is known as a bullwhip effect, which is an upstream effect. Understanding this is a distortion of demand information as it travels upstream can result in inefficiencies, increased cost, and disruption within the supply chain. Any kind of preparation will throw the supply chain out of the window. We have actually seen a couple of examples very shortly in 2021 when we were affected by COVID. Uh, during that period when lockdown was declared, we had seen that consumers had actually stopped items or supply even when while it was not required. So the entire supply chain was actually quite very empty. The reason is why because consumers suddenly uh, started purchasing in huge quantities, and hence the entire supply chain was just kind of kind of vanished, and there was no supply at all. This actually created a big amount of change. Now, that's something which is in terms of variation on a negative effect, but the same variation can be experienced in a positive effect when consumers start ordering, or there is the fluctuation is so large that the forecasting is not done properly. Now, this bullwhip effect is majorly caused due to the lack of coordination and communication between the intermediaries. Now, intermediaries means the retailers, the wholesalers, the distributor, the stockist, the manufacturer, and of course, at last comes the supplier. So there is lack of total coordination, communication between these participants of a supply chain. Then not only this, there is lack of forecasting, and we are actually kind of keeping good amount of inventory which are inaccurate in nature. The price, and of course, whenever we are stocking item, the price is actually susceptible to the price of item variation. So when the price of items rise and fall, it also creates a variation or fluctuation in terms of supply chain. Not only this, there's a lead time variability depending upon the transportation factor, depending upon the order requirement, depending upon the which are being processed, or depending upon the item which is specifically kept at the inventory level at different intermediaries. So as you are able to see that the quantity which is specifically ordered by customers, there's a small time effect. Okay, when it reaches to the retailers, you will see that there is a huge deviation or the variation is large with respect to time. And when you see in the upstream, the fluctuation increase more towards the manufacturer, it's actually a huge variation. Here again, illustration is specifically being shown to you that consumers order 10 units. To the retailer, it seems 20 units. To the manufacturer, it seems 30 units. And for the supplier of the raw material, it's actually a magnanimous effect. Okay, that's specifically being shown in front of you as a bullwhip effect. Now let's understand in terms of what now the sources which we have also seen in terms of Padmanabhan and S1 1997 Sloan Management Review, where we are able to see a graph that from a consumer point of view, the sales are, you are able to see that there is a small bump. Whenever there's a small bump here in terms of the orders to the wholesalers, you will see a large bump. Okay, the same synchronous effect when you are seeing from wholesalers orders to the manufacturer, you're able to see a big change of effect. All right, and when you are able, the same thing is going upstream from the manufacturer ordering to the suppliers, you will see that the variation is so large that it's quite very uh, not possible to meet these fluctuations. All right, so these are inordinate in nature. Right, what are the causes of bullwhip? The specific number one is the reason is demand forecasting inaccuracy, as I had highlighted this to you earlier. Forecasting consumer demand is a challenging task. Even small errors can lead to significant discrepancies in orders. Orders are placed based on these forecasts. Any inaccuracy which is kind of administered into the system can amplify, and it can move upstream. Whenever it moves upstream, it creates to resonates to bullwhip effect. Not only this, the second reason, which is also quite very significant, is order batching. Organizations tend to place orders in large numbers or in batches in order to save on the transportation cost, which is also known as the ordering cost. Okay, and also whenever large items are being ordered, they come in batches, or there's a good amount of discount which is available when orders are being uh, taken in batches. So this practice can lead to a accumulated amount, kind of unplanned accumulated inventory. Not only this, it can also create uneven order patterns and unnecessary demand fluctuations. At certain places, when the product is not in demand, it can lead to backlog of inventory, and this can actually create unnecessary demand fluctuations. Third reason is price fluctuations. Of course, every item is susceptible to demand and supply curve, and whenever we are seeing any promotions, discounts, any price change, it can influence consumer behaviors, which can lead to erratic order patterns, causing suppliers to react to these perceived changes in a totally different manner. The fourth reason is lead time variability. Variations in lead time for manufacturing, transportation, and delivery can cause order adjustments in response to perceived delays or change in demand. Lead time variability is quite very significant. Now, with respect to this, we have also seen reorder level concept. Reorder level, you might have understood the lead time consumption and plus the safety stock. So, as a matter of rule, majorly it is being observed that we keep the safety stock close to around 50% of the lead time consumption. And this is how the lead time variability can be specifically matched without creating a bullwhip effect. Rationing and gaming. Whenever there is a shortage of supply, retailers might place larger orders to ensure that they receive their desired quantity well in time. This can lead to overestimating actual demands and increase order fluctuation. So today, if I require, say, suppose 20 items, but we know that there is a shortage of items. So what does the retailer do? They order 40 items. But whenever these 40 items come in, there is an overload of 20 items. So this specifically can lead to, of course, we are ordering 40 instead of 20. So it's actually not giving the actual demand. Okay. So the solution to these are to mitigate this risk of bullwhip effect. We can actually see that whenever we are ordering, we need to order in batches, and that too in minute quantities. Of course, ordering cost is quite very high, but then vis-a-vis whenever we are holding the stock for good amount of time, the storing cost also increases, which can kind of have a balancing effect with respect to ordering cost and the storing cost. The consequence of the bullwhip effect, it of course leads to increased inventory costs. Whenever we are ordering extra, uh, it leads to storage costs. That automatically increases the inventory cost. Inefficient production schedule. Because of this bullwhip effect, the production schedule goes haywire and quite leads to inefficiency. The distorted demand information. Uh, Whenever we are ordering, just as an example, but we have understood, instead of 20, we ordered 40. So we are giving distorted information, which is flowing upstream, which leads to a lot of inefficiencies in the supply chain. A reduced supply chain efficiency, as very rightly pointed out, in terms of distorted demand information, we are responsible for creating that uh, inefficiency in the supply chain, specifically in terms of whenever we are not able to estimate the actual consumption. And of course, all this leads to customer dissatisfaction. So there are places where the item is available in huge quantity, but there are other places where the item is not available. And the item is not available, the consumer is not going to buy the item, is going to go away without consuming the item or without purchasing it. That leads to good amount of